The rook roller, which is also called the steamroller or simply the two-rook checkmate, is very common in games that are played by newer players. Because a lot of times you end up with just the two rooks left on the board. Your opponent has a king, but how do you finish them off? Well, here's a great starting position for us. The black king is already against a wall, which is where we need to push him in order to do this rook roller checkmate. Once he comes off the wall, then he actually has 8 squares that he's touching, and that gives him a lot more escape room. Let's watch, for example, if we move one of our rooks up to the top. Let's say that we jump the rook all the way to the very top, check. Now the king can come down, and he has room to run after our next check. He'll move down to his 3rd rank, our 6th rank. Now, instead, of course, we would want to first trap him there. So we play rook to a7 up to the 7th rank, makes an electric fence. The king can't come there. If he tries to step forward, it's like, bzz, ah. So we want to keep him trapped. He's stuck on the back. He simply goes to the side, and then we finish him off, checkmate. One rook traps him, or makes that electric fence, and the next rook goes to the following rank to push the king back, or in this case, to get the checkmate. Let's start from the king being on his 3rd rank instead of on the back rank. Now we just have to do the same process, but notice what we do. We start with the electric fence. Either rook would work. And now don't play a check. He went back voluntarily. But if we start with the check right now, that allows the king to come down. And we don't want to leave any gaps in our electric fence. We want to make sure to cover each one of the ranks. So here we go to the 6th rank, then the 7th, and then finally up to the top for the checkmate. Now, if the king gets close to one of our rooks, you want to move your rook across to the other side. Make sure you don't go all the way to block the other rook. So we run away from the king so that we're still making an electric fence. And then as he runs over, we start pushing him back. Check, check, check. Now he's close enough to capture our rook if we move to the top at b8. And if we move the other rook to the top on a8, the king gets to just come down a square. So remember, when he gets close, switch your rook to the other side. Then the other rook, don't block your h rook, and now finally checkmate. Now let's look at a common situation that could be a sideways rook roller. Instead of the top being wide open, that allows us to use our 2 rooks for checkmate, it's the side of the board. And so we're going to use the 2 rooks by stepping one rook out of the way, keeping it far away from the black king. And if you see the arrows, you see the unstoppable plan for white. Check, check, and checkmate. So a sideways rook roller, push him to the side. Now finally, let's look at an example of a position that might happen in one of your games in which you don't have 2 rooks right now, but you can see how we get there. We capture that last pawn on the king side, and maybe they just start pushing their pawn. Now we can simply push up, and when we promote to our rook, and remember you can under-promote and get a rook, then that's checkmate. But if they had moved their king over, we do have to be a little careful here, because now the king is so close that if you do get a rook, he'll take your other rook. Instead, you need to just promote to a queen, and that checks the king, but it also guards your rook. And that's checkmate, like a modified rook roller. All right, that's it. That's the rook roller.